Hey everybody, I'm Carla with Race to Walk, and it is time for another episode in Hack the Saga. And what this is on my channel in the past, I've always shared good thoughts about good words, and that meant Bible studies and book reviews. And they were so good that they got stolen. Reported it to a bunch of people and a bunch of authorities. Nobody did anything. Every time I reported, the attacks got worse. Okay, so I started live streaming at, and you can go to my website at racetowalk.org, Hack the Saga, and I've been live streaming about this since August of 2024. And along the way, since I started doing this, I discovered more people that were involved, people that I knew, people from the Houston Apologetics program that I went through at Houston. It was then known as Houston Baptist University, now known as Houston Christian University. Dean of the School of Christian Thought, Phil Talon, actually had they had hacked a Google Family Group on my main Google account, and I reported that to the Salem police back in October of this last year, and they haven't done anything. So anyway, it's people I knew, not only people that I knew from the apologetics program, which, when you look at the apologetics is about defense of the Christian faith, and these are professional Christians that are doing this, is super disgusting. But anyway, in all of this, I kind of got tired of talking about them. And so I've actually learned a lot since I started doing this. And since the beginning of the year, I've been doing, my live streams have been more about what you can do if you, I hope you're not ever find yourself in such a crazy situation that I am, but I know that I'm not the only person that has had their work stolen from them. There's just every single day there's some new threat as far as online, with phones, with accounts, whatever it is. And so whoever you are, you probably have some exposure and have experienced some, experience loss because of digital attacks, right? Whatever it is. And so since the beginning of the year, I've been talking about how you can not only defend yourself, but also document what's going on so that you can, one, get law enforcement involved, and two, that if necessary, if it ends in a lawsuit, that you will have a series of chronological documentation so you can show facts. Because if you just say one thing that happened, this is just my experience. If you can get a police department to take identity theft, hacking, unauthorized access of your accounts, even if they're financial accounts, you're very, very blessed. Consider yourself blessed if they will take it seriously and actually try to do something about it. So what probably is going to have to happen for action to be taken, because at least in my case, just that I've discovered it hasn't ended it. They still continue. To this day, they still continue. You're probably going to have to document everything and have an accumulation of evidence so that, number one, they can see that, yes, this is actually something going on. Number two, that it's actionable, that crimes have been broken, right? Or that laws have been broken and crimes committed. And three, that, if there's something going on in an area, then the law enforcement will begin to be able to see patterns. But if they don't have the documentation, they're not going to be able to see those patterns, right? So first, it takes the people who are the victims to be documenting what's going on, right? And then reporting that to the police and providing that evidence to the police so the police can see the big picture, right? Because they can't unless if somebody's collecting the evidence. So, just the other day, I could tell, I was at a coffee shop, I could tell that someone was literally, you can, at least with my devices, I can tell when somebody's in it, they stop responding, especially the phone. And so anyway, there was this lady that just came in and sat down. I said, hey, just FYI, there's somebody here I can tell that's accessing, that's hitting computers. So don't go into any accounts that are that you need to, that are sensitive. So anyway, that's what this series is about. And what I've been doing is I've been putting together a digital defense toolkit, and I've been talking about how I'm going to put that out. Well, here's the thing. As I've been going through this, I've realized that as certain things happen to me, I'm thinking, okay, I need to adjust this a little bit, or I need to find a way to present the information so that it's clear. Because for me personally, there's a lot of different people and agencies that I'm documenting information about, and I want it to make it as clear as possible about what went on. So I'm trying to make each information clear. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, about how you can document, because I talked before in this investigative dossier, you have your chronological log, right? You have your evidence log. So every event, you have an ID for the event and you document what happened. Then for every piece of evidence, you have a log and an evidence log. And then you also have a cast of characters. And this is what I've really been working on recently, and I'll explain why. So anyway, the title of this stream is Two Probates and a Funeral. But I also wanted just to talk a little bit about, whenever we go to a funeral, we start thinking about, what happens next, right? And so this whole series is themed around Harry Potter. And one of the things that really fit for me anyway into what I'm talking about today is when Dumbledore gave a speech at Cedric's funeral. This is at the end of the Goblet of Fire. And Cedric Diggory had died during the book. And this is Dumbledore's eulogy for him at Cedric's funeral. I'm just going to read this. Today we acknowledge a really terrible loss. Cedric Diggory was, as you all know, exceptionally hardworking, intricately fair-minded, and most importantly, a fierce, fierce friend. I think, therefore, you have the right to know exactly how he died. You see, Cedric Diggory was murdered by Lord Voldemort. The Ministry of Magic does not wish me to tell you this, but not to do so, I think, would be an insult to his memory. Now, the pain we all feel at this dreadful loss reminds us that while we may come from different places and speak in different tongues, our hearts beat as one. In light of recent events, the bonds of friendship we made this year will be more important than ever. Remember that, and Cedric Diggory will not have died in vain. You remember that, and we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true right to the very end. What this particular eulogy reminds me of is it reminds me of back in the New Testament when Paul writes that we have to finish our race well, right? And in this, Dumbledore is reminding them that they have to come together and work as a team to defeat evil. And that's the same, that's always true, right? These criminals, they're not working alone. They're not solo agents. They're working together. We have the criminal literally are working as a team. And if you think that you're going to be able to stand against them all alone, that's not going to happen. But the second thing is that each of us are going to have a day when we're no longer here, right? And death is as certain for anyone as, if you are born, you're going to die one day. This is just the truth. And so when we go to a funeral, that's a reminder of that. But it also should be, hopefully, the funeral that we go to is an example to us of how we should have lived our life, or an encouragement to us of how we are to live our life, right? That isn't always true. Sometimes, as in Dumbledore's eulogy, people like to cover the facts. Sometimes people really didn't live a good life. Sometimes they did really ugly and harmful things. And sometimes the world is better off now that they're dead. But people don't usually say that, right? It doesn't change the truth whether they say it or not. But we have to, I think, just remember that every single thing that we do and every decision that we make, we are building a legacy of either good or bad, right? So couple weeks ago, this is on February 20th, I went to my Aunt Lorraine's funeral. She's my maternal uncle's wife. My Uncle Carlton had passed away in 2021. And if you've watched these from the beginning, there's family that's involved in all the attacks against me. Most of the people that are from the apologetics program, they're not here, but they've been conspiring and colluding with family. That was made very obvious to me through several things. And I haven't really talked about them lately because, you know, I've literally, since I walked out, left family on October 7th of 2024, I haven't had contact with them. I sent them one message. It was obvious that, you know, they were continuing in what they were doing. I know that my brother was I saw his car at Samanka Place. I know he's paying people to, you know, I had things stolen, phones stolen, underwear stolen. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. But anyway, so I haven't talked about them because, you know, at this point, other than, you know, continued attacks against me, they're irrelevant, quite frankly. I've, in my live stream on the Zombies Among Us, you know, there's sometimes people go so far down the dark path that they're no longer the person people that you know. And I haven't really had time to reconcile the whole thing, but that's kind of how, you know, I've been able to, you know, recognize the things that are going on from family members, and still keep going. You know, they aren't the people I knew anymore. But anyway, so I saw this, not that they told me that my aunt died. Nobody told me this. Nobody contacted me. But I saw a post that my cousin made on Facebook about her funeral. And at this point, there's so much fake stuff that, you know, I was like, okay, is this a real thing? But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go. I talked to my aunt the last time in May of 2024 at my dad's 80th birthday party at my brother's house. And like my parents and her daughter-in-law had said that, you know, she had dementia. I couldn't tell. I mean, she seemed pretty sharp to me when I saw her then. So, you know, the last time, you know, I saw her, she was the aunt that I always knew. But she had her funeral at St. Luke's in Woodburn. So I went up there. And I wasn't really sure who was going to be there because, like I said, I haven't been in contact with anyone, but I have been making reports to a lot of agencies, and I was thinking that somebody's got to be in jail at this point. I don't know. But anyway, so I walk in, and they have this is the thing, I'm not Catholic, and so I wasn't even sure which service, you know, I was supposed to go to because there's a wake the day before, and then they have a reading of the Mass, and then there was like, they named it differently. I wasn't really quite sure, you know, which one. But I walked in a little bit late to the Mass. And I saw my brother and his wife had signed in the guest book. And I was like, okay, great. You know, was this from yesterday or today? So anyway, I go and I sit down. I go over and I'm kind of towards the back, but on the right-hand side. And so anyway, you know, they were there. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But the thing about the service to me is that this is her order of service for her funeral. And I was looking at some of the songs that she had chosen. And I asked one of my cousins or her sons afterwards if she had picked this. And he said yes, that she had it all written out, had all the passages chosen, had all the songs chosen. And when I was looking at the information about the songs and the hymnal, it was like in the 70s, you know, that's when it was written. And I think that all of us have probably songs that have a lot of meaning to us. And so, you know, I don't know the full story, but I can imagine that those songs were probably very popular and current when she was going through, you know, that, you know, you become a Christian, but there's also a time when you have to decide, like, what is it really going to mean to you, right? When are you really going to be serious about your faith? And so as I was listening to the songs, I was thinking, I bet these songs were ones that had a lot of meaning to her when she first really started to become, really walking with God. This is what I can imagine. But anyway, afterwards, it was pretty cool because I didn't sit with family, but, I sat with, ended up being friends of one of my cousins, and they were talking about their memories of her. She was somebody that not only did she focus on family, but she brought people into family. There was one man that was there that she basically, she took care of his mom when they were born. And he said she was always really special to me. And so that was just, it was a reminder that even when some people choose wrongly, not everybody's like that, right? So anyway, that's one thing. That's one funeral. But anyway, this is the other thing that I've really been focusing on, not really focusing on, but where's my, okay. We're not going to be covering this right now. Okay. So the other thing that I have been covering, I was live streaming about this last summer, is I just happened to come across a fraudulent foreclosure sale in Marion County. I had seen a publication in the Kaiser Times, and there were just some things that looked sketchy. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to go watch the foreclosure sale. If you go to my website at racetowalk.org, Hack the Saga, there's a little button where it says the Marion County foreclosure sale. Okay. So I go up there, and the sale was delayed for an hour, which I guess that's not unusual. But when the hour came up, there were two other people that hadn't been there at 10, and the sheriff's staff took them back in the corner, not on the courthouse steps, back in the corner, and the bidders hid behind the column. So the only reason I looked all this up was because, number one, I had been seeing all these other sketchy probates and public notices in the Kaiser Times. Just happened, thought, I'm just going to go look and see what this is. And it was the behavior of the people that were there that made me think, okay, there's something shady going on. And once I looked at the court records and the county records on the property, it was obvious that was true. I don't even think the paper that foreclosure was filed on was valid. Okay, it wasn't even valid. So I had reported I went out to the Stayton police. They said they couldn't, it was out of their jurisdiction because it was in the county. I went and spoke to Chief Copeland at the Kaiser Police Department because, the Kaiser Times is in his jurisdiction. He didn't do anything. And finally I called the Marion County Sheriff's Department, spoke to a deputy there, and he started making phone calls about to like what I was telling him. And he called me back and he said that somebody in their civil unit had said that they had checked it out and that was just all normal. Now, the civil unit is the one that sent the notice of publication to the Kaiser Times. They're the ones that sent it there. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the area, it's like, I'm trying to think of a good description of other places, but Salem is here, right? And Kaiser is up north, and Stayton is where this property is like south and to the east. There's completely different markets, right? And in the court documents, this foreclosure had been going on for 5 years. The man died in the middle of it. And during all this, one judge in 2021 had said that notification had to be in the Statesman Journal. And then in 2024, there was another judge said it had to be in the Canyon Weekly, which is specific to Stayton, or a Stayton-specific paper. Instead, it was publishing up in Kaiser. Okay, so me personally, if a requirement for this sale is that there be a public notice posted. And 2 judges have said it needs to be in particular papers, and neither one is the one that was ended up being published in. That to me says the sale is invalid, right? This is just logic. So anyway, about a month ago, I don't even remember what I was looking for, but I was looking at something in the county records at the Marion County courthouse. And I just happened to I was verifying. That's what I was doing. I was verifying the numbers. I actually had the number wrong on the eviction one case that they had tried to file on them back in 2023. The judge dismissed it. That one was wrong. So I was verifying the numbers, and I come across there's a new eviction notice, and I was like, what? So anyway, they had this Refresh Real Estate that bought it at the sketchy ones hiding behind behind a column. Back in August, filed an eviction on the family. They didn't even know about it. And this is what I told the deputy back in August when I was trying to get people to open a case about it. I said, I don't even think that they know that their house has been sold, because weird stuff going on at the Marion County clerk. Their name isn't even on the property there. There's like a couple blank owner information missing or something. Super weird. And I said, I don't think that they got it. And when he was talking to the people at the civil unit, they told the deputy that it had been vacated back in 2023. That was not true. Now, I don't know if that was an intentional lie, or if the people in that civil unit just have reading comprehension skills and they don't know how to tell what actually went on in a court case. I mean, I said, I don't think that's true. And he said, well, that's what they said. What I should have done is I should have went back and confirmed what I remembered and then called it back, because I'm sure that deputy would have driven out there. But what happened was, this even gets better. So I sent an email to the family, because they had their email on the response to that eviction, and it went up. They had a trial on it on the 26th of February. And I said, I've been following this. And anyway, in one of his replies, he said that, now keep in mind, this had been filed in January. The trial's coming up 2 weeks before the trial. So after this eviction has already gone on, an envelope shows up in his mailbox saying, manila, right, with 2 in it. Just a second. Let me do this. I have to watch sometimes reconnect, sometimes there's interference in the stream. Anyway, they get a manila envelope. There's 2 letters postmarked from August from the Marion County sheriffs saying, with a notice that their house had been sold, right? And there was a note on the envelope saying that it had been found in the bushes along Fern Ridge Road and then taken to the Lynn County post office or something. I don't know. Or maybe it was Lyons post office. It was out. Like, why are they just getting it now? I mean, where were these letters in the 6 months? Because this is what the deal was. There was a right. Okay, first of all, I don't even think that the loan that it was foreclosed on, I'm positive that was fraudulent. That's a fake recording. But even if it were a valid loan, they would have had a right of redemption 180 days afterwards. They didn't even get notice of it. So anyway, so it's published. They said they got 1 notice in October 2024, but they called their lender and they were like, no, you have the deed. It's all good. We're not foreclosing on it. They didn't get any other notification all this time. The public notice was in Kaiser, they do not publish their public notices online. And so the only thing that the first notice they had was when some guy from Refresh Real Estate showed up at their door and offered him $2,000 to get out. Okay. So anyway, I go to the trial. I'm just showing up like I don't know what, how this is going to go. They had already been through another eviction where Refresh tried to get them out. The judge said, "You don't have any standing, you're done." And so anyway, I was sitting there waiting, and the attorney, Mark Basante, or it's Passannant or something like that, he walks in, and the clerk or whatever the person is that takes notes for the judge and everything, she's like, "Oh, it's good to see you." It's like, I guess he normally just phones it in. So they had this whole rapport going on because he does this all the time, but he came in person to make sure to be there for this eviction case, right? Because anyway, they've been trying to get this property. Literally, they started filing on it in 2018. So anyway, long and short of it is, the only thing the judge would listen to, the only thing, was anything that happened after the sale. And all he wanted to hear was that Refresh Real Estate had bought it at the sale. That's all he would listen to. He's like, "I understand." He basically kind of almost said that it sounded like there were problems with the case. So it didn't matter to him whether or not the foreclosure was valid, whether the sale was valid. It just did these vultures buy it at this fraudulent sale? That's the only thing he would listen to. And then it even gets better. He's sitting in there and he's like, "Well, I understand that there might be a warrant out for you for like child support. So I don't want you to be surprised if the sheriffs come in." And he's almost gleeful while he's saying this. So the sheriffs do come in. There's 2 deputies that walk in. And I just have to say that, I don't know, sometimes my vibes are off, but when they walked in the room, I mean, it was like it's like you could feel the peace when they walked in the room, right? And all I have to say is there are 2 more witnesses to what went on, right? So anyway, afterwards, it wasn't even that. It was like a traffic ticket. And he's like, "Yeah, just, go in and take care of her," whatever. So it was pretty much a complete clown show. And then before this, oh yeah, this is even better. Before this, I made a phone call to, because I'm just like, I think it was Claude AI. It's like, "Oh, call this person, this person, this person. You can report to these different places," right? Nothing's happened. I called the U.S. Attorney General, and that's in Oregon. And I left him. I said, "Well, I don't know who is supposed to handle this," but I told them what was going on. And so this guy calls me back, and he's like, I'm giving him the information, and he's like, "Well, I usually do handle violent crimes, and I'm not really sure if there's any crimes have been committed here." And I'm like, "What is wrong with the state?" "Oh yeah, his name was Tom Edmonds, like the same last name as the final judge in that foreclosure case. James Edmonds, same last name. I don't know if they're related, but anyway, what's wrong with the state? What's wrong with the state?" So anyway, that is where it's at. There's the last I communicated with the heirs, they were representing themselves. I mean, so quite frankly, I think that there's an opportunity if there's somebody that is wants to champion their cause to go for a big settlement, because quite frankly, when I look at the probate for Daryl Stroschine, the father, there was I was looking at everything that was filed on the property, and it was all these notices from these fake loans, right? And when they started filing foreclosure notices on it, when I looked at his probate, 2018, it was in 2018, and 2018 was when all these ambulance rides started, because that was a bill against the estate. And I told him, "You know what? I would be pretty willing to bet that it was the stress that killed him." And his daughter said, "Yeah," she said, "the coroner wouldn't even look at it." She said that they the coroner said it was his COPD, but she's like, you know, he wasn't even on oxygen, and stress affects COPD too. So anyway, I think there's an opportunity for a wrongful death case, and who knows? Because I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one. But just logically, anybody with, I think, half a brain could make this something anyway, or make a lot out of this, helping the family. So anyway, that's the update on that. That's where it is, and then we're going back into cover like personal family fraud. So this is what happened. So I go in there, and this is, I'll show you where I'm walking in at. So I walk in, I'm sitting down kind of like in the back side, kind of on the third. And when I first get there, I look over and I see my sister-in-law kind of like right over to the side, right? And then she leaves, and I don't know where she, you know, I don't see where she's going. I'm not really paying attention. It's like, you know, if I have to face it, I will, but they're like completely, at this point, they're completely irrelevant to me. So anyway, that was during the mass. And then when they start the actual service, I turn around, and they have the procession coming in. And then look, lo and behold, let me see if I can, I'm on my iPad. That is, to the right is my sister-in-law, my brother, and this is like my mom, like hiding in behind. This is like at the end of my brother. They go and they move like right behind me. So Teresa was sitting, you know, in front, and then I don't know what the deal was, but then they go and they sit like literally, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows behind me. So I'm thinking, you know, like normal people might just like walk out first or something. No, they stood there, and so I'm like, whatever, you know, I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I mean, they're the ones that being, no words for this. So I just walk by and just stare at them. They did not even acknowledge that they recognized me, literally. So then after that, I go and I go to the luncheon afterwards. And like I said, I was sat with some friends and my cousin. And I didn't know at the time. It just turned out that they were friends of my cousin. So anyway, I'm sitting there talking to them. So I'm at this table here, and they're literally like my mom, my sister-in-law, one of my cousins, an aunt and an uncle, 2 aunts and an uncle. And they're sitting literally at the table right there. Not a single one acknowledged me. My cousin Philip, who's one of the sons of my aunt, walked right in between the table, didn't even glance this direction. So there's other people sitting at the table too. So even if they're like, you know, ignoring me, you'd think that they'd have some sort of interaction with them. And then his wife, Philip's wife, Paige, is talking to my mom. Like, so she's facing me and then talking to my mom. It was like, I don't know, it literally goat rodeo. So then my cousin Keith, who doesn't live locally, he lives, I guess, over in Redmond. But for some reason, I thought he was in Ohio or something. I don't know. But anyway, he comes to the table, and he looks like, oh, hey, hi. I mean, he recognized me instantly. So it's not like, oh, I've changed so much in the last year and a half. I don't think I've seen Keith since my wedding in 1999. Literally. I don't think I have. But anyway, so I was talking to him, and I could tell, like, I mean, that was confirmation. It wasn't a shock. It was confirmation for me that, you know, the group that was there is all part of this agreement for whatever. I don't even know the craziness that they think they're going to be able to pull. But anyway, but I knew that Keith wasn't. So anyway, going on to this, how this relates to everything else, right? So we're talking about defensive documentation. And so when I'm talking about this digital defense toolkit and how to document things, it's not just like if you're being hacked or if you're being sabotaged, it's anything weird that's going on. Because if you can document something as you go, right, have names, dates, places, you are going to have you're going to be able to have more support for the things that you say, right? So as I'm doing this, I have to, one of the things that I was, you know, I have this whole setup, right, of how I'm documenting different things, have a whole spreadsheet, have an evidence log, have a chronology, but I hadn't really started my cast of characters. So I had to figure it out how to do this. And I started filling it out, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to take what I have and run it through Gemini and say, okay, this is how I'm documenting it. If you were analyzing this for a court case, what type of information would you want? And the answer was that the way I was doing the relationships was confusing for an AI model. So if you are documenting people, especially for family, what they like to see is you do the whole line. So you do like the grandparents' name, right? And then a little arrow name, and then the parents and the little arrow, and then the person is like the leaf, like, go all the way down. So it's clear what the family line is. So I had to go through and do all that. The other thing too, as far as documenting people, you want to have an ID number for each of your entries that you're doing, right? Whether it's an event on the chronology, whether it's an evidence, or whether you have the, your people, right, that are involved. And so what I came up with and this took like a day or something too, because I'm like, okay, this person, this is family, this is a spouse, this is, and then you start getting into the messy family situations, like how do you document all this? And so what the recommendation is to, like, for me and my girls, like, we're F, and then like my number is 001, and then theirs is the same letter prefix, and then 02, 03. And then when you get down to, at least for me, for like my mom's family, so that will start with like an FG, so family Janella, and then the number. So the number is all unique. You keep numbering it down, but the letter prefix, you want to have some sort of descriptor of how this person is connected to you. And then I have a little legend of, who is who. The other thing that they suggested was that having, like, for a husband and wife, have them be the same number, so they're like a family unit. So like my aunt would be whatever she is, like FG for Janella dash 00037 or whatever, and then dash spouse, because my uncle is a son, right? And then she's a spouse, but you keep them on the same number. So anyway, that was one of the things I was working on, and it took me some time. And I also because the other recommendation was, like, I have these 3 sheets, right, in this investigative dossier, but the recommendation was to move the cast of characters off of that same sheet into a different location, a different folder. So, and then just reference their ID number in whatever you're documenting. So this isn't my log, but this is just an overview that I did for what went on at the funeral. And so you can see I don't have any names here. I just have the numbers. So this is one of the things that I learned from going to the funeral. And anyway, I have more proton things that I implemented because of that. But the other thing, I just want to say this because it's so bizarre to realize that people aren't who you thought they were. And I realized that even if they were who I thought they were once, at one point in time, they're not now. And that's what we have to remember, right? Like, we can change. Like, every day we make decisions about who we're going to be. We can start, even if we're going down the wrong path, every day we can start going down the right path. And so just as we are not the same person we were last month, last year, a decade ago, people that we know aren't. And so we just have to acknowledge that. But What I realized is that whatever this whole craziness regarding me has been going, that's not the only thing. Just after the funeral, I was like, I was wondering if my brother even still lived at his house on Olmstead Road, because again, I've been doing lots of reports. I mean, I would be thinking somebody would have been investigating it, but whatever. But so I did a search in the county records because I couldn't remember. I just wanted to see if he still owned it. And it didn't come up at all. And so I thought, okay, did he move? But then what I realized is that there were house numbers that were missing. So I went into the county clerk and looked on there. They have one database you can look on the map. And when you look on the map, the tax lot is there, but the street number's gone from the record. And when you actually look it up, it's the entry for the situs address is missing for my brother's house, as well as one person that lives 2 doors down from him. And I was like, what is the deal with this? So I started looking at all the properties kind of around that I knew, because my grandparents, they lived on Olmstead Road. They owned property on both sides of the road. The place where my brother lives now used to be my grandparents' property. He bought it from my uncle, who bought it from my grandpa. Anyway, so I'm looking at this, and one of the things that was really similar to what's going on in the Stroschine house is that there's a lot of missing owner information. It's almost like there's this whole block, this whole block of properties where you can't get past, there's just this whole transfer information is missing. And so anyway, a couple things that I realized. I had also looked at my grandma Ida's probate, and there were only 4 entries on it. There was an affidavit filed. There was a notice that was closed. It was opened and closed the same day. And then a couple months later, there was a note or some sort of lien or something from the Health and Human Services, Disability Services, for $51,000. And then in 2014, there was a note saying that the files had been purged. So 2014 is about the time when all this subdividing came about in that area where my grandparents used to live. So researching a little bit, what it seems to me is that back in, and this is looking at the only property that my grandparents' name is on is where they actually lived, the lot where their house was. And that was transferred to another uncle in 1988. My grandpa died in 1989, and my grandma died in 1991. And so that house is transferred for $10,000. The property where my brother lives now, if you look in the property records, it looks like my uncle bought it from some woman out in Silverton for $10,000. And I'm pretty sure $10,000 was the amount that my mom and my aunt got. The story was that my grandma felt bad that the daughters didn't get anything and the sons got land, so she saved up money, and so that they could have that like as their inheritance. And they got that before she died. They invested in rental properties, and they built that up to something. I don't know the truth of it, but I do know that that transfer in 1988, that was asset stripping so that my grandpa could go into a care home and have the state pay for it. That's what that $51,000 was. That's Medicare fraud. And the fact that all the subdivisions started after 2014, when the probate was purged that had that note on it of this claim of $51,000 for the state, that seems to me to be pretty intentional. I don't know the whole story about it. I know that my two uncles there had been some arrangement before that. I don't know what the story is, but this is my thought. If there was $10,000 to be found, it could have been, and my grandpa needs to go into a care home, and my aunt and my mom turned that into an income. That income could have been used to, pay for my grandpa's care, right? And then they wouldn't have had a lien on it. I mean, it's like they literally made just that one house, just the one piece of property. I think they sold it for $340,000. Like when he sold it, like 2014, 2015. I mean, it probably wasn't worth that much in 1991 or 1989, but it was worth more than $10,000 just with the house, right? When they partitioned off those properties, they literally made millions of dollars on that. And so it's like this heritage of fraud. It's not like it's pulling one over on something. So the things that they're pulling on me, this isn't new. This is not new. This is a pattern of behavior, right? So anyway, the other thing, as I was looking at all these properties, seeing all these owner names and things, I was looking up the road, and I saw like Dick and Denise Bell, who I remember, they live north of my grandparents' house. But then there was a probate, something about the Higueras. And I'm like, that was another family that lived there, when I was young and going over to my grandma and my cousins who live right next door to my grandma. And I'm thinking, that's not right. I am positive that the Higueras lived to the south, because I remember standing, at my aunt and uncle's house, and it's this direction. It's to the south. It's not to the north. And so I don't know what the truth of the matter is. I mean, there could have been some arrangement with the Higueras when all that subdivision was going on. I don't know. But just with a pattern of behavior, right? And the fact that there's all these missing transfers, and that these properties these lots that were sold are these nice, long, neat lines, right? It makes me wonder, did they do the same thing to the Higueras in developing that property that Refresh Real Estate is doing to the Stroschine family? Because the Stroschine family, there's a parcel immediately behind them that's 67 acres that's owned by Stone's Throw property, but the entire parcel is 200 acres, and it backs up to Silver Creek Falls Forest. And I don't know the truth of that. I've had enough stuff going on. I haven't had time to go to the surveyor's office to look at the history of the plats. But just with what's been done to me, what I know that was done to my grandparents, and they basically died indigent, right? And defrauding the state. Who knows? My friend Mark Ritchie in his book, My Trading Bible, said a lack of integrity, a shortage of integrity always expands. So is that something I would have thought anyone in my family would do? No, but I would have ever thought they would do what they've done to me and are to me. So anyway, that's a little update. And so anyway, if you want to try out, I've been saying this, but literally I've been structuring things so that when I put it out, it's going to be done well. So I'm going to be having the digital identity toolkit. I'm also going to, on my website, legacymarketingservices.com, which is my business site, right? I've created a new service package for digital identity protection, because some of the things I'm recommending in the identity toolkit, I'm thinking, you know what? Some people aren't going to want to do it themselves, and so I should have a service offering doing this. But the digital identity toolkit it's really focused. I mean, you could do it without Proton services, but that's really been the core of me being able to reclaim, my accounts. And so if you want to try out Proton Services and what I've been talking about as far as storing these, the investigative dossier, you can go to racetowalk.org, go get Proton Drive. So if you click on that link, you can get to it. But anyway, that's what I've been up to. Doing a little more discovery, a little more identificational repentance. And if you're not familiar with that, go to my website, racetowalk.org, and I have quite a few posts on that. But anyway, dirt always needs to come out, right? And so I don't know. I mean, I can report the Medicare fraud, I guess. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to me like the state really cares about any crime, so who knows? But anyway, that's that. But I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. And also, if you haven't, make sure you sign up for my website, or not my website, for my newsletter. If you go to resources.racetowalk.org, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can see the past newsletters that I've sent out. But also, if you sign up, you have to make sure that you confirm it. So watch for the email. If you don't get it, check in your spam box, because if you don't confirm it, I can't confirm it for you. And if it doesn't come through, submit it again. Anyway, and if you still can't get it, then tag me on some social media and I'll see what the deal is. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.